Who's going up? Who's going down next season in the EFL Championship? According to the bookies and the market, this is our first check-in, a really early one, 2 months before the season starts. But I really enjoy these as a kind of time capsule to see how things were looking at ground zero for 25-26 in the EFL. And we will track this, believe you me, all season. Get involved in the comments if you have any thoughts on what we are about to reveal from the market. I like these a lot because obviously there's a lot of science and thought going into the algorithms and pricing mechanisms that the bookmakers lose. And also the market, I do tend to trust somebody who has parted with their hard-earned cash more than supporter of Team B who thinks his team are going to finish 15 places higher than they did last season. One of them's got one type of skin in the game. The other has got a more tangible type of skin in the game. Let's get into it. So at the moment, all we've got is odds to win the division. Sometimes you can get a bit more detail with to be promoted through the playoffs, etc., to be relegated. So I've literally just gone from bottom to top. Obviously, there will be teams with the same odds that we have just tied in a particular position. Let's start at the bottom. So a few fan bases are going to get particularly triggered. Remember, this is the market and the bookies, not my opinion. Here is what the bottom 6 is projected to be by the bookies, by the market, as of June, the start of June 2025. And Oxford United, who are 100 to 1 to win the title, come out in 24th spot. Meh, you can get triggered by that if you're an Oxford fan or choose not to. They were comfortably safe, weren't they? 53. I mean, I say comfortably safe. 4 points. 4 points above safety in the end last season, but a couple of hell of a sprints under Gary Rowett after he replaced Des Buckingham in mid-season. Rowett is a very safe pair of hands in the Championship, especially as it sort of pertains to being hard to beat. Clean sheets, winning home games 1-0, and that was what Oxford's survival was predicated on. They're hoping that they can build for next season after surviving season 1 in the Championship. Probably some quite good value there because I'm not sure they're going to be 24th, are they? But that is what the market are saying. A bit surprising there, 23rd, Charlton, because what we often tend to get with clubs promoted from League One is a little bit of that Newcastle smell and a kind of momentum bounce where sometimes with the markets, it's just down to the amount of money that's actually been placed on the teams. And you get excited fans of teams who've just been promoted, highly engaged, who want to back their team to go back to back. Why not, I say. But Charlton in 23rd. Did Charlton get relegated in 23rd with Nathan Jones there, who, as I said about Gary Rowett, I won't say hard to beat like I would say for Rowett. I'd say hard to play against, especially from what we saw in the playoff. Well, in fact, all 3 games. I was just going to say the semis against Wycombe, but even in the final, they turned those games to dust and kept 3 clean sheets. And up they go. So there we go. Newsflash, no one's getting relegated next season right now. As you can see, I've got 3 teams there tied in 20th. They're all essentially tied at 66 to 1 in terms of, to win the Championship, which makes them 20th outsiders, which means the market thinks one of those 3 is going to be in the bottom 3. QPR, can we run chaos theory on QPR? The manager's job is open. Cifuentes there had kind of stabilised what had been a very chaotic club for a couple of seasons, but he's kind of fallen out with the higher ups, and we'll see what happens, well, most importantly manager wise and then recruitment wise. But if they get it all wrong, QPR, then you know what happens if you hire the wrong manager, sack them during the season, get your recruitment wrong, have 2 different sets of recruitment from 2 different managers, get on a bad run. we know how that can end. So I guess that's the theory there with QPR. For Preston, it's a continuation of the second half of last season where they looked nice and safe, got very deep in the FA Cup. Was that a distraction? I don't know. It's probably too simplistic an argument because we have had kind of Preston just sat in the middle of the Championship for years and years now, and it did all look like it was going to tail off last season. They went into final day. There was a chance they could have gone down. They've survived in the end by 1 point, although the goal difference would have kept them up even if they hadn't have got that point against Bristol City on final day. Could we see more slippage and what we saw in the second half of last season happen throughout the season? Maybe. Who knows? Pompey, well, they had a different direction of travel to those other two we've just spoken about, and that was in the second half of the season, up. And in fact, probably the final 75% of the season, they definitely weren't a 20th placed or a relegation team. 54 points is a really, really decent total. Someone got relegated with 54 once. It was Peterborough. Someone will tell me the year down there in the comments, won't they? But Pompey didn't look like a relegation team throughout winter, did they? They were doing really well at home. Star players like Murphy putting up really, really good numbers. Scoring from set pieces. Yeah, home fortress, etc., etc. So I don't think they're going to be in a conversation for relegation. But as you can see, it's very, very tricky at this juncture to be pulling out people for relegation because, you know, it would normally be easier to go on the promoted League One teams, but of course two of them have got oodles and oodles of cash which we think they're going to be spending, so hence they're not in that conversation. And the disasters that will relegate teams haven't happened at the start of June, have they? As you can see, it says bottom six there. We've obviously got 7 teams there because we've got Derby and Sheffield Wednesday tied. They're both 50-1 to win the EFL Championship next season. And again, chaos. It's a shame with Sheffield Wednesday and QPR because we're saying the same thing where they both brought in excellent young managers who mitigated against chaos, and obviously the ownership and Mr. Chansiri, anything could happen at Sheffield Wednesday. So yeah, I'm not hugely optimistic unless they can get a takeover done. No takeover, Mr. Chansiri staying there and Danny Roll going. I don't know if I like the smell of that for Wednesday because they seem to have punched really nicely the past couple of seasons. Derby 18th. I clipped out a bit from the Q&A at the weekend where we were talking about Derby being much higher potentially than that if they can ride out what they did under John Eustace to survive. So you would think there's value there if you can find the right type of pick for Derby. The 18th, where they're kind of projected there, could be higher than that. Let's move on to the rest of the bottom half, and as you can see, the market has got 4 teams there grouped in 12th, which would actually be in the top half. But hey, you can't have 4 teams finish in 12th. Anyway, let's deal with Blackburn and Hull first. Hull job still open. Who knows? What we do know about Hull, we know 2 things. They'll probably recruit fairly aggressively, but the ownership will also be aggressive in terms of if manager doesn't deliver what is required. And we've seen McCann, Arveladze, Rossinia, Volta, and now Sellers all come in and go out. Well, McCann didn't come in under Mr. Ilachali, but he was the first one he was inherited and the first one to be fired by Mr. Ilachali. So could Hull finish 16th? Yeah. Could Hull go down? Yeah. But also, could Hull recruit really well, get the right manager in and finish high up? Yeah. A massive span for what Hull could do given the ownership there being the biggest strength and the biggest weakness. Blackburn tied there 16th. So both Hull and Blackburn are 40-1 with the bookies to win the EFL Championship next season. Blackburn finished 7th. So, I had Blackburn get relegated last season. I thought with Smodics going out and Venky's not being able to get money out of India, it would be a massive struggle. Eustace did really well. Ismail, it looked like they were going to then tail off into mid-table, but then he got a win streak at the end of the season, didn't he? 4 of the last 5 won, if they'd won on final day, they would have been in the playoffs on goal difference, incredibly. So, I don't know. Is Blackburn held together by gaffer tape? Are they going to drop down? I always predict that they will, but they never do. I'll probably have them somewhere around there in my predictions and be wrong again. Anyway, here's that group of 4 all kind of baked in maybe for a top half finish. And I guess fans of those teams will be slightly perturbed by that. Maybe not Stoke and Watford so much, but Millwall and Swansea were both above there last year, 8th and 11th. I think the issue for these 3 teams is, well, obviously the teams coming down from the Premier League, but the idea that most of the world thinks possibly first and second in League One may go straight into the top half of the Championship this season. And then you have got, some traditional big hitters who have sort of lost parachute payments over the last few years. I guess Watford is one of them. Also into that bargain for the top half. So not everybody can get in there. Watford, new manager in there. Phatthananan, am I pronouncing that right? I can't remember his name exactly. I'll do my research as we get into August. Alan Sheehan, how will that go for Swansea? Stoke, Mark Robins. Does he now progress in the way that Coventry did? Or is Mark Robins without Adi Vivash not the same thing? I don't know. Stoke seems to rinse managers over and again. And Millwall, well, you kind of have them in 12th and then they end up in 8th, don't they? They always seem to punch their weight. And can we get the continued development of their excellent European signings now, changing the kind of way they're doing things there? I know it's just looking at last season's table, but you'd probably have Millwall as the favourites to finish highest out of all of those. But hey, what about Swansea keeping the run going? Stoke finally put a season together. And by the way, with Watford, Mr. Pozzo is now not working on Udinese anymore. So is he going to be more focused? Is that going to help Watford? Let's go into the top half. Let me have a swig of my drink as well while you look at that. As you can see, I've only got 5 names there. Remember, we've already done 13 for the kind of bottom half, haven't we? So we lose 1 here. And you can see a group of 3 in the middle there. And some blooming big names in there. One in particular at the top. Bristol City 11th. Yeah, the market is forecasting a bit of a drop down for Bristol City. And you can see it, can't you? I hate to say Robins fans, because brilliant punching above their weight to get into the playoffs. Only 68 points though last season. And if all of a sudden Liam Manning, I don't know, by the time you're watching this, will he have been announced as the Norwich manager? Out he goes. I don't know, does then maybe someone buy Jason Knight, and all of a sudden a team that punched their weight to get 6th has potentially lost their manager and their best player, and you're like, oh, what are the expectations now? So I don't know if that's a pre-Manning or a post-Manning kind of number there, but yeah, I can see a bit of a drop-off. Hope I'm wrong. I hope everybody gets promoted. I say that every season. Spoiler alert, only 3 teams we're going to. And look, there are 3 teams tied together, 8th, all 16-1 to win the damn thing. And we talked about 2 of the established order in Norwich and West Brom, who've been in the Premier League, who've had parachute payments and now have run out of them, but have still, as you have to do, tried to keep themselves in that, and I feel horrible for even saying it, that kind of top 23, top 25 level, where you have a big advantage in terms of squad and resources and asset base over everybody else in the EFL. They're trying. I think Norwich have probably done it better than West Brom. Remember, there's been really an ownership change at both as well, haven't they? So they're 2 of the established order in there, and we've mentioned Liam Manning probably going to be announced at Norwich. And West Brom as well. What's happening with managerial duties there? Because we had the kind of rigmarole last year of Corberon going out pretty much on Christmas Day, and then Mowbray back, didn't work. So, yeah, a bit up in the air there. I think I'd trust Norwich and Manning and their squad more than West Brom. But there they are, look. Wrexham, where, and we haven't mentioned the League One champions yet, and we haven't got to the top 6, have we? But yeah, Wrexham are going to make a splash, aren't they? How high up are they going to be? I've seen arguments that maybe there's going to have to be a tweak in recruitment style where they've gone for just experienced, proven, getting through National League, League 2, League 1. What a feat, by the way. Is that going to work in the Championship? And can you do that PSR-wise in terms of... Remember, Darby used to do that, didn't they? They would just bring in, for like 5 million quid a go every time, 30-year-olds who'd played 100, 200 games at Championship level and were just ready to go. I don't know if you can. I think you have to widen the scope and the net a little bit. Fascinating to see what Wrexham do. Also, style-wise as well. We had kind of chalk and cheese with Birmingham and Wrexham last year. They both went up, but Birmingham trying to control the ball for the entirety of the game. Wrexham, a bit more efficient, a bit more good without the ball. Can you get a Championship promotion with that? Yeah. You've got to do it well, though, haven't you? I'm trying to think who the last team to get promoted like that. Stevie Cooper's Forest, although they were really good counter-attacking side, weren't they? Maybe Warnock at Cardiff in 17-18? I don't know. You tell me. Leicester City are the highest ranked team in the Championship, as in they finished highest in the pyramid last season and 18th in the Premier League, unless they're deducted points, I was going to say posthumously in terms of, I don't know how you say, retrospectively, there you go, for their Premier League campaign and switch places with either Ipswich and Southampton. But they are not in the top 6, and I think the whole world knows exactly why. Are they going to get a knock on the door from the EFL in the middle of June? And are the EFL going to be ready, having spent a year prepping it after getting thoroughly mugged off, and the Premier League did as well, by Leicester City's lawyers? Are they going to be ready with a points deduction? And would that points deduction mean that they don't finish in the top 6? The market is hedging their bets on Leicester. No points deduction. I think everybody probably has them in the top 6 pushing for promotion. But there's a clip on this, by the way, from the Q&A. You can check that out. If that points deduction is above 6 points, it starts to get difficult. Although I get the argument that if Leicester aren't given a business plan or a transfer embargo, then, I mean, look at Sheffield United. They got 90 points. You would have had to have deducted, well, they scored 92. So you would have had to deduct 25 points from Sheffield United last season to drop them down to, have I even got that maths right? 92, they would have needed 67. There you go. 25 deduction would have been what it takes. So without the soft embargo maybe or the business plan, I don't know, Leicester might be able to mitigate a big deduction and still finish in the playoffs. You tell me. Right, are you ready? Top 6. Remember, we haven't had one of the League One teams yet, have we? I think you know, guess who that is. Here are your top 6 according to the market right now. There we go. Wow. And we got them split in half. Go figure. 3 of them are parachute teams and 3 of them aren't. So, again, it all comes down to the monies, doesn't it? So, tied in 4th, all at 10-1 to win the Championship next year. Borough, Coventry and Birmingham City, who, let's be fair, there's going to be teams that get boosted on this because a lot of people are going to bet on them. A lot of people are going to bet on Birmingham. They're really going to like the story of back-to-back promotions, aren't they? In the same way Ipswich did it, Birmingham got an ungodly points total last season in League One. They're all settled. They've got a good young manager. That stadium's going to be full. That stadium's going to be noisy. All of a sudden, we saw Ipswich come in and win like 7 out of the first 8 games. Would you be surprised if Birmingham were right at the top at the end of August, middle of September? And Ipswich stayed there and stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. That's the argument with Birmingham, and it's not a bad one. Let's see how they adjust. And along with Coventry and Borough, Coventry have been the best, in my opinion, non-parachute asset builder, recruiter, i.e. buy 2 stars for no money, Gyökeres and Harmer, brilliant. And then sell both and gradually retool your squad, which then ends up where it is now with Sheaf and Van Evik and Wright and Sakamoto and Sims. Well, he'll probably be sold. And Thomas and Dovin. And they've got a really good squad, haven't they? Coventry tailed off with Robbins. Lampard got them back to the playoffs. And the argument is for Coventry, if Lampard's points per game is extrapolated all season, then they'll probably be over 80 points, won't they? So definitely be in the playoffs. So we'll see if that happens. Borough is an interesting one. And Borough, I don't know what it is, whether it's just Stockholm Syndrome with people who, bet on the Championship and Middlesbrough. They're just always in the conversation. And I spent a lot of time last season trying to explain to people why Borough were there. And often we were relying on underlying numbers. Easy for you to say, because of XG, entrances into the box, shots, touches in the box. But all those people who get very cross with underlying numbers and look just at wins and points, well, let me be very clear about this. If you look just at the league table, it's too simplistic. If you look just at the underlying numbers, it's also too simplistic. The truth is somewhere in the middle. But it didn't show up in the end, did it? And they dropped down to 10th. But I think Michael Carrick would have been gone already if he was going to be gone. Am I right, Borough fans? So I think that means Carrick gets the transfer window, gets through to October and a set up for another transfer window. And yeah, I'm always preaching for stability here. So as much as maybe Carrick's underperformed the last couple of seasons, again, in the face of his playoff team being completely ripped to pieces, and even last season, Latte Lath going in the middle of the season did not help, did it? But let's see how they go this season. So I can see the argument for all three of them being in the top six. You think Borough are going to get some bids for Hackney, Azaz, Morris, etc., don't you? Top three, all parachute teams, was always going to be the way, wasn't it? So Sheffield United 9-1, Southampton 11-2, Ipswich 9-2 are the favourites to be the top three. So we're going on newly relegated teams being in the top two again, and I don't want to get into the wider conversation about the sheer boredom of the chasms between Premier League to parachute to non-parachute, and this constant yo-yoing we're getting. It's rubbish, isn't it? But that's where we are, and that's the projection. Sheffield United, the question for Sheffield United is, can they do what Leeds did? Because the similarities are now striking, aren't they? Finished third with a big total over 90 points, or 92 scored on the pitch with the deduction. Losing the playoff final to fourth place. What did Leeds do? Well, they sold Ruter, and they sold Gray, and they sold Somerville. So their three best players, or certainly their two best players and their biggest potential player, and then they scored 100 points. Good job, I say. What would the equivalent of Sheffield United doing that be? Sousa, Ahmed Hodzic, and Harmer, wouldn't it? Although some people have been mentioning the keeper as well. He's very good, Cooper. So, yeah, they're going to have to sell a couple, but does the muscle memory, they've still got the year 2 parachute payment, haven't they? I'm sure Wilder stays, and, they've won a hell of a lot of football matches and scored 92 points on pitch last season. There'll be no points deduction this season. Can they go again? And then a lot of it depends. You could be really unlucky for Sheffield United if two of the year 1 parachute teams, which is what the market think is going to happen with zero information right here, right now on recruitment, you could be in the wrong place again. And bless the Sheffield United fans, they do not like the playoffs, do they? So Southampton and Ipswich as the top two. Will Still, Southampton, that's a big thing, isn't it? How's he going to go? I wonder. And they're not coming down with a Livramento and a Ward-Prowse to sell this time. There is a dibbling. How much can they get for him. Depends a lot on Still, doesn't it? But you'd still think, I'm going to fall over my stills, and will Still be there at Christmas? I keep getting asked. He's just got to get a good start. And if we're going to have the same ridiculous, 100, 92 on pitch, 76, I'm looking at it. What was the season before? 97, 96. So I'm just looking up. 97, 96, 90, 87. It does feel like if you're Will Still and you haven't got 18 points at least from the first 10 games, it's like, oh, are you too far back already? We get another ridiculous points total. Let's see. I'm really excited to see what he does squad-wise. Look, there's Still. If they bring Armstrong back, well, he scores tons of goals whenever he's in the Championship. Walker-Peters, Harwood-Bellis, Ramsdale, for God's sake. He was the Arsenal goalkeeper a couple of seasons ago, playing right at the top of the Premier League. So there is plenty of quality there, providing, and I think the managerial hire, it would have to be a bust for this to go wrong. Will Still would have to get this totally wrong. And I don't really see why that would happen. He's very young, very calm, and there's I think 11 years experience in the coaching game or something like that. So yeah, you can see it working. You really can. And then Ipswich, and I guess the thing about Ipswich is how much chaos is there going to be. We're literally, as I'm sat here today, expecting the announcement of Liam Delap to Chelsea. And it's almost the case with Ipswich is you would want any departures to happen literally, even in that first little mini transfer window, but certainly before July. If it's Delap and then one other of Davis, O'Shea, Hutchinson, you'd think, if they're going, get them gone, and it'll be 30 million for Delap and however much else they bring in, plus a year one parachute payment. And then it's how early can they recruit, how powerfully can they recruit, and is anybody going to try and take Kieran McKenna? Because last summer, it was massive, wasn't it? With Brighton and Chelsea and God, even Man United and Spurs and everybody and his dog linked with McKenna. Obviously, he's just been relegated from the Premier League, so his stock is lower than immediately after a double promotion at a very young age. But you never know. You never know if there's a domino effect, and it'd be something like Postecoglou out of Tottenham, and then Tottenham, can they take the Bournemouth or the Brentford or the Brighton manager or something? And then those are the teams, aren't they? The kind of respectfully smaller names that are punching brilliantly in the middle of the table would be more likely than a big name like a Tottenham or a Chelsea, Man United who we had last season. I realise none of those jobs are open right now, but there's obviously thoughts on the Tottenham job. So yeah, I guess the argument is Ipswich keep McKenna, they sell a couple quickly, they recruit well with the parachute money as well to pay for high salaries, etc., and they can power their way. And in theory, if McKenna, simple, overly simplistic logic, but if you pull out 96 points with a squad that came out of League One, why can't he do exactly the same thing with a squad that came out of the Premier League and a parachute payment as well? So there you go. That is our first look at the market. Have your say down there in the comments. I like to try and do this monthly throughout the season. Obviously, I won't do it in June and in July because not much has changed massively, unless you want it in July as well, if there's been a few little tweaks, manoeuvrings, movements. I'll make my normal plea in the comments. Try and stay calm. Let's not get overly emotional. If the market is backing your team to be lower than you want it to be. And let's be fair, with any predictions in the world, wherever I put anybody, fans of that team always want them higher. And for those people who love to say to me, it's too early to be talking about this, I say, stop trying to shut down conversation. People tell me it's too early to talk about the end of the season in round 42 of 46. So we're going to have the conversation. If you don't want it, I'm not sure why you've clicked on a video in June looking at the bookies odds, but there you go. It's never too early to get the debate going. and you can continue it down there in the comments.